Deadlock is a much newer MOBA, and as such, the roles are still emerging and not yet set in stone. If you've played League of Legends or Dota before, you're probably familiar with roles in MOBAs. In Dota, for example, roles are described as position 1 through position 5, indicating the farm priority of the role. As such, the carry, or position 1, gets the highest farm priority, while the position 5, usually known as the hard support, gets the lowest farm priority. League has some more specific roles, such as jungler or support, with itemization designed specifically for those. What about Deadlock? I've now had access to the game for 5 months today, and I believe we are starting to see roles solidifying in the meta in the tournament scene, which will inevitably start affecting everyone's games. In this video, we're going to focus on the current roles which are still developing, and I'll offer some advice on how to select your hero pool based on these. In every MOBA, you'll usually have a carry, a tankier character, and a support character. There are a bunch of other roles in between, such as the mid lane in both League and Dota, but I would say that these 3 archetypes are found in every single MOBA game. In Deadlock, this is also true. Most team compositions will have a carry, a tank, and a support. However, because of the way itemization works in this game, there is a lot more flexibility to this than in some other MOBAs. If built properly, a lot of heroes can become tanky, for example, or even deal lots of damage. In ranked play or even tournament play, roles play a part in securing a victory. No matter how much you wish you could just outskill your opponents, if they have a better team composition than you, they have an advantage if they're equal in skill everywhere else. It's much easier to win a game when you have, say, a Kelvin and an Abrams on your team than when you have Haze, Infernus, Wraith, Seven, all on the same team and they all just want to farm the jungle. Of course, you can still win while having the inferior draft, but in order to give your team the best chance of success, understanding what every team should have in Deadlock is incredibly important. At the time of recording this video, Ranked does not yet have drafting, but I personally believe it is only a matter of time before Valve introduces drafting. Let's get into specific roles. While the meta is constantly evolving, the 2 roles that are found in every draft in tournaments are the support and the carry role. The support role typically involves farming less than your teammates, buying items like Divine Barrier, Health Nova, and more importantly, Rescue Beam. I cannot highlight this item enough. In its current state, it's mandatory for any character that is more of a support archetype. It's extremely strong. The heroes that are most often seen playing this role are Kelvin, Ivy, McGinnis, Bebop, Viscus, and sometimes Dynamo. Dynamo fits the bill a bit less because he tends to not buy Rescue Beam, but I felt he was worth an honorable mention. Of course, you can play other heroes in the support role. I personally have seen Support Mirage, I've seen other support roles, for example, Support Vindicta has been played before, and I believe that we'll see many more in the future. And that's the beauty of Valve games. You can kind of do whatever you want. This is just to give more of a guide on what is actually played, and not to say every single support hero in the game. For the carry role, heroes in this role are typically good at farming the jungle and can output tons of damage when they get a lot of farm. At the moment, these heroes are predominantly Haze, Infernus, Seven, and Wraith. If given the opportunity to farm, they will absolutely dominate the late game with their very high damage output. There are plenty of other roles that may get better defined as the meta continues to evolve. Personally, when our team drafts, we like to make sure that we have at least one character that is fairly tanky and capable of frontlining, and at least one character that can initiate fights, such as Paradox with her swap or Lash with his ultimate. If you're an aspiring competitive player and you want to learn how to draft better, make sure to always have at least one hero that will be more support-like and buy a Rescue Beam, and at least one hero that will be able to farm the jungle effectively and scale well into the late game. On the other hand, you don't want to have too many heroes that farm the jungle and just want to farm and sit still. You want to have heroes that can be active early on in the current meta. Be creative with your other picks and think about synergies between heroes. For your personal hero pool, the heroes you play should make sense together within their utility to the team. For example, let's say your main hero is Abrams. It would make a lot of sense for you to pick up Mo and Krill as a secondary hero, and perhaps even Lady Geist as a tertiary hero. All of these characters are very tanky control type heroes that will serve a similar purpose in a draft. I do recommend being able to play at least one hero outside of your main role. For an Abrams player, that might be picking up a hero like Paradox that can initiate and provide utility and damage to the team. For a carry player that, say, mostly plays 7, that might be adding an Abrams to your pool so that you can pick that up when your team needs it. At the moment, we're not sure how Valve will approach roles in ranked Deadlock, but if they take the Dota approach with role queue games, you'll still have to play your off role at least once in a while, so it's good to have an option to fall back on. Let's look at some examples to better illustrate what I've said. In this first example, we're going to look at a draft between Hydra Nation and Bottom Barrel. We're going to take a look at each team and try to break down which category the characters belong to, if they belong to a specific category at the moment. On the side of Hydra Nation, we have Kelvin, Shiv, Abrams, Pocket, Wraith, and Lady Geist. In this draft, Kelvin is the support character that Hydra Nation has chosen. Most likely, he will build Rescue Beam as well as other support items and will do his best to move around, be active, and support his teammates. He will also most likely be one of the lowest net worth characters on his team at any given moment. Of course, this is not true every game, but usually this is how these things play out. On the other hand, as far as the carry role goes, Wraith will probably be the carry character in this composition. And most likely, it will be the same players that play Wraith that would play other carry characters. For Hydra Nation, that's Lefa. So Lefa is usually the one that's going to play the Wraith, the Haze, the Infernus, and characters like that. On the side of Bottom Barrel, we have Yamato, Warden, Infernus, Viscous, Lash, and Paradox. On Bottom Barrel, Viscous is going to be the more supporty character, meaning he'll probably be the one to pick up the Rescue Beam if they choose to have one, which most teams do. And Infernus is the more typical carry character, which means that he'll probably be the highest net worth on the Bottom Barrel team. What about all the other characters? Well, on the side of Hydra Nation, you have a few heroes that can be flexible. For example, heroes like Lady Geist and Shiv can itemize to have a balance of tankiness and damage depending on what the team needs. Considering Hydra Nation already has a decent amount of naturally tanky heroes, it would make sense for the Shiv to itemize a bit more aggressively this game, for example. The Pocket also provides a ton of damage, so you could also make the argument that, hey, maybe as Shiv, we just need a hero that can tank a little bit more. However, we already have Lady Geist, which can also itemize defensively. So you have to make a bit of a decision and see how your teammates itemize and change your itemization based on what your team needs. Depending on what the Lady Geist purchases, for example, as a Shiv player, I may choose to go for a tankier build, such as the melee Shiv build, or for a higher DPS build, like the bleed Shiv build with the knives. On the side of Bottom Barrel, when you have a hero like Warden or Yamato or Lash, you have a lot of decent teamfight ultimates, especially Warden, Lash, Infernus, as well as the Viscous Ball. On that front, I think as Warden in this game, it's good to itemize for the team fight because that is already one of your team's strengths. And so building around the ultimate makes sense. However, you could also argue that you don't have a lot of weapon damage on your team because Infernus is a lot of spirit damage. And so to make it harder to itemize against your team, you could decide as the Warden to go a more gun-based build. Now, I'm not saying that you should do all of these things, but this is how you should try to think about the game. And I believe this is how more and more people will try to think about the game. Right now, we're in a very spirit-heavy meta, and so most people will build spirit armor, but a lot of people will underestimate the necessity of building bullet armor. And so if you have both spirit and bullet damage, it makes it harder for the enemy team to itemize against you. I think right now this is something that is underutilized. Let's take a look at another draft. In this second example, we have buff enjoyers versus DMS. I chose to look at a different region, such as Europe, in order to get a different idea of what was going on and see if we could spot similar patterns even across different regions. And we definitely can. On buff enjoyers, we have Wraith, Yamato, Lady Geist, Warden, Seven, and Kelvin. On this squad, Kelvin is clearly once again the supporty character, and on buff enjoyers, that will always be Piggy playing those roles. On the other hand, the carry character is a little bit more uncertain, considering they have Wraith and Seven who can play that role and farm the jungle. Now, I would say that in these situations, it's important that if you're the Wraith, that you itemize more aggressively in order to be more useful in fights, rather than itemizing just to farm. For example, a lot of Wraiths will go Tesla bullets, But in this game, you probably don't need to go Tesla bullets because 7 already has that enabled in his own kit and can farm the jungle very effectively, meaning you probably need to have your power spike a little bit earlier and be able to be more active and involved in team fights. On the side of DMS, we have something similar. We have Haze and Infernus into roles that can be considered the carry role. The Ivy in this draft is probably the support, although the Dynamo could also buy Rescue Beam and supportive items. However, Dynamo in my mind is more of a control character, though he does have a lot of properties of a support. In this draft, if you're the Haze or the Infernus, most likely one of these heroes will have to be less greedy because there's not infinite farm on the map. Not everybody can get super farmed in the jungle, which means that one of these heroes will have to itemize a little bit more active. I would say that in this draft, most likely the Infernus will have to be more active because he's able to be active with fewer items. However, you could also argue that the Haze can itemize to be more of an assassin type hero, playing around her invisibility and going for solo kills. And this is also true. At the end of the day, I'm not pretending that we know everything about drafting and that we know everything about team compositions yet, and that's what's so interesting about Deadlock, is that these things are developing, and as players get better, we'll only get more creative things. I just want to start the conversation so that you guys start thinking about the hero compositions that you have on your team and how you should itemize based on the game and think about the game and the role that your team needs from you. Do you already have 3 jungling characters? Well, if you're also a jungling character, then maybe you should itemize differently this game, considering your team already has Infernus, Haze, and 7. At the end of the day, things like this are what are going to separate the best players from players that just follow trends and follow builds. You need to be able to think critically about the game, and that's what my channel hopes to teach you guys. I'm interested in what you guys think about roles in Deadlock at the moment, and how you think it will develop in the future. I for one hope we get a drafting system in ranked soon enough, as I feel like the experience is not as enjoyable without one, but I completely understand why they have not implemented it yet. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.